How many people in this room aren't technical? Okay, that makes 4 of us. So this is not a technical deep dive into Splunk. I was asked to provide an overview with a focus on security, which is what I'll do. Just who here works hands-on with Splunk? Anyone here already? Yep. Okay. Who here? What do you know about Splunk? Throw a word at me. Yes. Sorry. Yep. Yes. Thank you. I get that one all the time. Oh, we had data. We had ES, which is. I could never comment on that because I work in our partner team as well, so I can't say that. And expensive, which I get a lot, which is actually my favorite objection. Because when you're in the middle of an outage, it's costing you a lot of money, and you use my technology to solve it, you'll discover that I'm not really that expensive. The only thing I like to point out on this slide is check out my email address. Do you know how hard it is to get your name, first name only at a vendor email address? So I always take kudos for that, thank you. I know. Men get excited about the weirdest shit, hey. Oh, we're recording, so I won't do that anymore either, sorry, CDM. Splunk, we play with machine data. Everyone know what machine data is? Just logs, right? But logs are terrible because if you ever go and look deeply into logs, you'll see that they're messy, there's no consistency. I personally believe that there's a secret guild of log creators who get together and make sure that they don't do anything in the same format because it makes it very hard to troubleshoot, which is why Splunk was born, right? Our customers, before we were born, we went around and said, what's your biggest problem? And they all, 100% of them said, we don't have a tool, like a Google type of search and index tool, that lets us investigate simple problems in our environment. So that's what we do. I was very pleased to hear that people still aren't building in security to their design. Anyone here remember NIMDA? Got to be some people here. Code Red, SQL Slammer. When all those things came out, people started saying, do it in the design phase. So it's good to see that nothing changes. Otherwise, we wouldn't have a security industry, right? Splunk started out actually in IT operations. We are a platform technology. We're not silo bound. We typically start in security or IT, just fixing common problems. But the nature of machine data is there's also technical as well as business information in machine data. So we quickly spread across most of the silos. From a capability perspective, anyone here familiar with structured monitoring tools which normally suit 1 or 2 use cases and are pretty much useless for anything else? We take a different approach. We say you should put all of your data into Splunk, or as much of it as you can, because that's how we charge you as well, by the way. And then when you need to know what questions to ask, that's when you go and do your investigations, right? If you think of a mobile log, Domino's Pizza, if they'd have used their phone to order that, that log would have had information that was critical to all of these people, right? And our view is instead of setting them into 7 or 8 or 9 independent different tools, put them in the one tool and let people ask the question that they want to ask. What else have we got? Yeah. We're scalable. We're licensed by the amount of data you ingest into your Splunk index on a daily basis. Currently, the largest customer in Australia ingests 80 terabytes of data a day into their Splunk index. And they use that to gain real-time insights. Most customers don't do that though, so I'm more focused on time to value. We are an open platform, right? We're not open source like the Elk Stack or Elasticsearch, but if you can get your logs into Splunk or if you support API connectivity, then we can talk to whatever tool you've got. We're a hybrid tool as well. We don't care if you're on-prem, cloud, Google, Azure, AWS, or some of the private clouds that are out there. And we use a lot of machine learning. All the marketing people say artificial intelligence, but what they really mean is machine learning, right? And if you want to understand the difference, think artificial intelligence, think of the Terminator, and machine learning, think of the Iron Man suit, right? One, you just wind up and say, go and kill people until you find this guy. The Iron Man suit gives you massive augmentation of your capabilities, but still says, what do you want me to do? You can say to it, every time this happens, do this, but it still gives you that choice. So when you see artificial intelligence in data analytics companies, they really mean machine learning. This is what it represents. All of your different data on all your different platforms come into the one box, and the different people ask their questions. This is some new terminology from us. We actually call this our 4 pillars, but I have a problem because it's horizontal, so I'm thinking of a different word for it. I was going to say plank, but that's not really a go-get-'em kind of word. But this is the capabilities that the Splunk platform has as a total platform, right? And these are problems, and these are tasks that people need to perform to solve problems in their environment. So our core capability is investigate. Okay, I can guarantee you, in this category, we are in a category of our own. No one can solve problems like Splunk solves problems. Threat hunters, support analysts, they like us because we can ingest any type of data and we can ask any question of that data, and we don't require that data to be pre-structured. Monitoring, there are thousands of monitoring tools out there, and they perform a pretty important task. But a lot of them don't talk to other monitoring tools. So when you're trying to get an idea of a visibility of a complete service, they're not very helpful. Analyze. This is where things like ES and some of our higher level capabilities come in, where we integrate machine learning capabilities. And we're talking, advanced correlations of security use cases and things like that. And of course, act is, what do I do about it, right? Because I'm in a digital world now, and if I'm getting 100 phishing emails a day, and I have to investigate every single one of those, and they take me about 40 minutes, but I've only got 2 people to do that, then how do I do that, right? And when we talk about why does it take such a long time to discover threats in our environment, a lot of it is because of the backlog of work that security analysts have doing crap work. And with Splunk, we do all 4 of these things in the one platform, right? Which I can guarantee you, and I'm happy to be challenged on, no one else can do, right? Digital transformation. Who's heard of digital transformation? I used to think this was a really wanky marketing term until I went to work for Splunk, and then I realized you say that when you don't have a solution to the problem, right? And and digital transformation means many things to many people, and there's all kinds of stories out there and highbrow people writing PhDs and getting all of that. My view on digital transformation is what it means now is I buy my stuff online, right? Does anyone remember a time before the internet? Right? If I wanted to have a holiday, and if I wanted to go to 6 or 7 different countries and book hotels and rent cars and go to shows and do all kinds of other things, that would literally take me weeks to organize, right? I would go to a travel agent, I would ring them up, and they would then send me an envelope about that thick, full of paper and all your confirmations and say, there's your holiday, right? And if I tried to do it myself, does anyone know what this is? Someone must, I know, right? A lot of people won't. This is how people used to store their data, their contacts, right? This is called a teledex. That little bar there goes up and down A to Z, and you would write people's names and their phone numbers and their physical address, because there were no email addresses back then. And then I would click on that, and it would open up to my name, and I would ring me, or whoever it was I was ringing, right? And that's how people used to buy their shit. And now, who has the Qantas app on their phone? All right, if you go to book on the Qantas app, I can now do all of that stuff in about half an hour. Right, I'm integrating with third-party booking systems, inventory systems, payment gateways, reservation systems, maybe some immigration systems as well. And when I hit pay confirm, if that doesn't come back in about 10 seconds, I'm like, come on, at my phone, right? And that all looks really easy. But I can guarantee you that is really, really hard. And normally what happens is the bank gets a phone call because you didn't approve my credit card when it was the payment gateway for the consumer provider of whatever tool or product it was they were selling, right? And it takes a long time to figure these things out. And there's no loyalty, right? If I Google florists on a Friday evening before Mother's Day in Beaudesert, and I go to the Google search and I go to the top one because they pay their money, so we'll kind of respect that, right? And it doesn't work, I don't ring them and say, hey, you got a problem. I just go back to Google and I go to the next website down. So this is really an important problem. And while there's all kinds of things that people say you need to do to have a successful digital transformation, I kind of focus on the basics. And for me, that means my IT ops systems have to be fully optimized, right? I actually need to be able to predict if something's going to go wrong. And I certainly don't want to find about the problems from my customers. That really pisses people off, right? I need end-to-end visibility of my applications, because that's how my customers talk to me now, right? What features am I taking? Why did I respond to some kind of information that I sent them? And of course, why we're here tonight, security, right? My security posture has to be very strong and very fluid. I've got to be able to respond in real time. I've got all kinds of government mandates. I can't allow myself to be used to attack other people. I can't give out other people's information. And right now, the biggest problem in security is there's a lack of professionals out there. And the people who are doing it are really backed up, and that's why we have problems. And when anyone gets good, they get poached by someone else. So we kind of have a different approach to the whole digital transformation and how do we monitor for security and problems and things like that. And what differentiates us is why we were born. If you look at most monitoring tools that are out there, they get adopted because some new use case gets moved from the physical world to, I now do it using an IT system, right? And over a long period of time, as new use cases came about, these are my graphics, I dealt this, hey, not bad at all. No marketing people in this one, right? Sorry about that, all right? And what ends up happening is we have this thing we call the monitoring sprawl, right? And these tools are okay for the guy who's got the job of doing that one thing, but if you've got a problem with a critical service, then they're next to useless because they don't talk to each other, they're not aware of interdependencies, and because these are typically structured tools, they can only ask the questions that you've programmed them already to ask and to monitor for. And as soon as I try and ask them a question that they're not programmed to answer, if they could get a dumb look on their face, that's what would happen to them, right? And these things are really good for reporting and monitoring, but they're hopeless when it comes to investigation. Because if I don't capture the critical piece of data when I have that problem, and then I've got to go and find different ways to solve the problem. And depending on the nature, if it's a P1 or a P2, well, we don't really care about that. No, we don't care about P3s and P4s. Security's the other way around, right? Yep. Then I don't mind, but if I have like a P1 where it actually stops my ability to do business, then I have a significant problem. And typically what happens is I go and gather all the people who own these tools and I get them in a room. Anyone here been in a war room before? Right? And you stay there, right, until you solve the problem. And my favorite Splunk story is a couple of years ago, we had a very large financial services organization give us a phone call and said, hey, I work for the GM of applications. And we're like, whoo, right? Could you come in and talk to us? And we went in and they sat us down and we said, what's up? And they said, we're 36 hours into a Sev1 outage on a tier 1 banking application. And I have to tell you, I'm not a poker face person. I would have just grinned, right? Because for someone who sells this stuff, that's what you want. A good event is great, right? And they said, we've rolled back all changes for 48 hours and we still have not been able to find a problem. And we said, well, what are you doing to solve the problem now? And they took us into their war room. They had 25 people sitting around a table, all on their tools. And all of them were going, my light's green, right? Because by then they were just interested in proving that it wasn't them, right? Not in solving the problem. And we said to them, you guys should let us set up a Splunk index like right now, if you want us to help you. And we did. They gave us some compute. They broke a few rules. And it took about 2.5 hours, but we deployed some forwarders. We started ingesting Splunk into the index. And 2 hours later, our guy said, there's your memory bleed. And one guy in a handful of hours did what 25 couldn't do in 36. And that included the implementation. So the GM of the bank came up and said, we have 250 tier 1 applications here at the bank. How much would it cost to send all that into Splunk? And that was a good day, right? So they did the implementation and they went into real-time monitoring of their critical business applications, right? But where it got interesting was 2 months after that, the security guys went and hired a data scientist to come up for a solution for a very specific type of fraud called rogue trader fraud. You want to know what that is? That's when bank executives steal money out of accounts that they shouldn't. They go and do high-risk trades, and if they work, they put the money back before no one notices. But they call them high-risk trades for a reason, right? And most often they get caught. NAB, 5 or 6 years ago, that dude in Hong Kong, right? Lloyds, UBS, Barings Bank, the Queen's Bank in England, gone, right, from that. And this guy went and looked at all the bank's sites and infrastructure and IT and all that stuff, and he went back to them and said, you guys need to buy Splunk. And they said, oh, yeah, we've got Splunk. And that guy was presenting at a user conference last year, and I went up to the rep who did the original deal. And I went, oh, mate, you just had a big deal. I said, how'd you go with this one? And he said, no, we got like a little, only tiny bit, which I'm not allowed to name, obviously. And I said, why not? And 95% of the data was already being ingested, right? And that's what we mean by multiple lens, single platform. And all they really had to build was the correlation rules in the dashboards and give the appropriate people the access control to do it. And that's when the bank realized that Splunk wasn't expensive, because my license was less than 10% of the cost of the outage. So Mr. Expensive people, I know that there's common misconception out there, but that's not necessarily the case. Security specifically, we didn't start in security. It's just that the security guys really quickly how cool it was to have a technology where literally, because in an investigation, you don't know the questions you're going to need to ask, right? And I can ask any question on my data with Splunk because we don't require a predefined schema. We create the schema once you ask the question, because the nature of investigations is you also don't know necessarily what the second or third question is going to be. So that's the approach that we take from an investigative perspective. These are all the different security use cases people use us for, right? So there are literally hundreds of fraud use cases, light speed fraud from ATMs, purchasing fraud in state government departments and things like that. Security monitoring, we're the leading SIEM. We're up in the top right-hand corner of the Gartner Magic Quadrant, have been for 6 years. And IDG just said we've got the biggest market share as well. Our market share in SIEM grew 36% last year, which was insane. This is all the boring stuff that we try to automate as much as we can. This is the sexy stuff that the analysts really want to do. But our approach is, once we get the data in, then we know what the problem is, and then we start asking the questions. And we have this concept of the nerve center. See, we've got investigate, monitor, analyze, and act again. This is where Splunk sits. We're not a control, right? We are a data analytics platform which can ingest the data sources from all of these security controls or functions, whatever you want to call them, right? And then we correlate them against each other to look at lateral movements and things like that, with the view that we have the insight there from the monitoring, and now we have what's called SOAR. Anyone familiar with SOAR? Security Automation Orchestration, Security Orchestration, Automation and Response. That's basically using Python scripts and APIs to say, I've got to now do a phishing investigation. Instead of it taking a person 43 minutes, I can do it in about 40 seconds. Right? So automation is not about getting rid of people, it's more about a human capital thing and stopping them doing crap work, because people really hate doing crap work. But our approach is, we're device agnostic. We don't care what vendor your firewall is. We don't care what vendor your endpoint is. All of them have Splunk apps, by the way. You can go to Splunk base and there is an application that's been built for basically every single IT vendor out there. Cisco, who have no single pane of glass themselves, they use Splunk. They've built a Splunk app for every single Cisco tool across all of their silos. And we are actually their single pane of glass. So if you guys use Cisco and you're using Splunk and you want visibility, download the apps and start ingesting the data, and I get a license sale, even though I'm actually not a salesperson, so that doesn't matter. Okay, but it's not just about technology. Technology is great, but in and of itself, there is so much technology out there, it's not funny. And that's why security vendors love security, because they know we will never sell out of security. I said this to a bunch of CISOs one day. I said, we love you guys because you're never ever going to come up to me and go, I'm secure now, stop, right? They will always want more stuff. But the key issue is, how do I do this? That's the hard part, right? And that's where managed service providers in particular come in well in this kind of market, because they solve that resource issue. So security people are expensive, right? We have a maturity map as well. Everyone should have in security. We start with collection, move all the way up through to advanced detection. These don't have to go in any specific order. They're typically use case driven. But you kind of do need to get your collection right. If you haven't got your data collection right, it's really hard to do anything else. So you probably have to do one first, but then based on the use case, you might go straight to automation and orchestration. Shit, sorry. I drove up from Canberra today, so if I'm a little bit flaky, please don't be concerned. The challenges we see, how many alerts are there now in security? There are so many alerts, it's not funny. And how do I know which one's real and which one isn't? Endless products. I've worked for McAfee, I've worked for CA, I've worked for Checkpoint, I've worked for Splunk, I've worked for AppSense. There are millions of security products and none of them talk. They're all kind of static and just do their own one little thing. And now we're talking about this whole digital transformation and internet speed and things like that. We need to be able to respond at machine speed, not people speed. That's why SOAR is such a big thing. Costs continue to go up. Unless you use Splunk, because we know that 80% of the data that Splunk collects for the security guys is also critical data for the IT ops guys and the application team. And we go in and show them how to build a couple of dashboards, so they start using that. I talked about Cisco using us for security before. They also use us for IT ops, looking at the same data set. And if you're looking for security people, they're really hard to find, right? You need a whole bunch of different skills to become a high-level security analyst. It's handy to have networking skills or have someone in the networking team in your security team. I've seen quite a few problems with that not being the case. But this is almost impossible to find. And when you do find it, you need to take really good care of them because they're constantly getting messaged by LinkedIn saying, are you happy, are you happy, are you happy? We talked about SOAR from, I want to go a bit deeper into that. That's the orchestration and automation. And they kind of, this came from an acquisition. We had a company called Phantom, and they aligned it to what's called the OODA loop. This came out of the US Air Force, and it's how do I solve problems, right? And it's called OODA for observe, orient, decide, and then act. Right, and actually came out of the Air Force training, something to do in Vietnam or something, even when that Top Gun place came about. And observe for us is all the point products, right? And it's your firewalls, it's your endpoints, it's your operating system, patch levels and things like that. The orient is typically your SIEM tool or a threat intel or some kind of analytics platform where I gather in the data, I try to enrich the data if I can, add some context to it, and the decision making, this is automated in most companies up to here. But here, this is all manual. So automation and orchestration is a relatively new technology. There's a few vendors out there. We're the best, I have to say that. And what that does is automate the whole process as much as you can. But you really need to decide, what do I want to automate? A lot of people say, I want orchestration and automation. We go, okay, well, what do you need to do that for? Well, I don't know, everything. Well, no, that doesn't really make sense. Most people will say, if I have to do it 3 times a day or more, automate that. But we look at it from a security investigation thing, what are the jobs that I don't need my people wasting their time on? And often it's doing that basic orchestration. I see an event, what are all the 6 or 7 different things I have to do to validate if that is an event or not? And from a Phantom perspective, our goal is that by the time an event hits an analyst, say that fast, all the context is all there and they pretty much know what do I need to do. But make sure if you're going to go with some orchestration and automation that you have a plan to do that. The only thing I'll say about Splunk Solutions, and this is moving it back to investigate, monitor, analyze, and act. Core Splunk for us is the platform we use that does all of the investigations, and it can also do a fair bit of monitoring on its own just quietly. Enterprise security is our specific SIEM tool, and that's the tool that Gartner says this is what Splunk is the best at, and that's just a collection of frameworks, right, around incident response, threat management, all of that kind of thing. And that's for monitoring for known threats, right? There's a lot of correlation rules in there and things like that. User behavior analytics is for the unknown threats, right? That's where we use a lot of machine learning, and we look at outliers, and we use complex algorithms, you know, with the big long division signs and the X's and Y's and things like that. And Phantom is the tool that we use, that's the ACT platform. Yes, this is definitely a known problem, and I know what I have to do to solve it. I've got 100% certainty. Just run that through. And that's it. Sorry about that. Is that right, guys? I was in Canberra. Oh, with me, we also support military transitions to the civilian world, like Thomas here. And we go down and support that, particularly in federal government where there's a large requirement for security cleared personnel. A lot of them come out of the military. So that's what I was doing today, just because Thomas told me to tell you that. All right. Was there any questions? Yep. No, APIs and Python scripts as well. Yeah, so Phantom, what drives Phantom, right? So we can get access to logs, which is the hardest way to do it and make a decision. But typically we support Python scripting and also API connectivity. So there's about 200 vendors now that we have API connectivity with Phantom, where we can support all of the actions that they allow us to through their APIs. Yeah. Yes? We have integrations with all of them. Yeah, so we can see an event happen in Splunk. For example, let's say I get an attack and I can't complete a transaction because they're attacking my SQL box, and something goes back into Splunk that says this transaction failed because this is what happened. Looking at who it was, we can categorize the customer and the size of what the transaction was. I can immediately send an SMS or an email to the customer saying, hey, we saw there's a problem, someone's going to call you soon. And simultaneously I can integrate with Jira or ServiceNow or PagerDuty or Xmatters or Sherwell or anything like that and say raise a level 1 ticket for the call center to call this person straight away. So there's a lot of things that once I see something happen, I can then tell Splunk to go and do it on its own. But the more complex orchestration automation around solving complex problems that I normally have a defined process for, that's what we go to Phantom for. All right, thank you very much, everyone. I'm going to go home and go to bed.
Yeah, thanks for coming along tonight, everybody. It's great to see you all here. We're going to give it about maybe 5 or 10 minutes, then we're going to go over the road for a few drinks. Feel free to join if you want to. Thanks very much.